Okay, so last week we wrapped up by creating a room class that if you ran it, um, gave you something that looked like this. Okay, so your room probably looks different from my room, but I have a bed, a dresser, and a lamp, and a TV stand over here. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to start thinking about each of these things as objects in our room. All right, and so we're going to start a new project. And if you go to File, New, at the top of it, it either says Java Project or Project. So I'm going to say Project, but if yours says Java Project, then select that. Okay? If it doesn't, if it just says Project up there, then select Project. And when you get to this, it should on yours have a place to select Java Project. So just double click on Java Project and you should get to this. Okay, so we're going to call this new project Object-Oriented Programming. Object-Oriented Programming. And so then over here we get a new project folder. And what I want you to do is from your simple input-output project, I want you to go and right-click on My World and copy it. Okay, so copy My World. Then open your Object-Oriented Programming project to the SRC folder and paste that My World project in there. Or that My World class, I should say, into the SRC folder. Okay? So when you paste that in there, then you should be able to expand your SRC folder, find a default package, and expand that and find My World in there. All right. So now what we're going to do is transition to object-oriented programming. Okay? So what we have already is a room class that draws some different objects inside of our room. And for example, we have this code here where, I've commented it in where the bed, the pillows, and the sheet define how the bed will be drawn. Okay? And so what we want to do is we're going to move this over to what we call object-oriented programming. Okay? Object-oriented programming is a style of programming in which we create definitions of objects, characteristics, and actions using classes. Okay? We can think of a bed as an object in the room, so we need a class to define its characteristics and its actions. All right? So what is a class? Well, we use classes to define objects in Java, okay? The class is going to define the characteristics and the actions of whatever objects we create. And the way that we define characteristics is using variables. The way that we define actions is using methods. All right? Now, the first time you hear this stuff, it usually doesn't make sense, okay? Because you're just like, that's a bunch of words. I don't know what you're talking about. But you kind of have to keep on hearing it and seeing examples in order for it to kind of start clicking in your own mind. All right? What we're going to do in our new project is we're going to make a class called bed. All right? So over in Eclipse, make sure that you're in object-oriented programming this time, and we're going to go ahead and make a new class. So I'm clicking my new Java class button right there, and I'm just going to call it bed. Superclass should be object. I don't want it to have a main method, and I want to finish that. So when we create this class called bed, all right, right now there's nothing happening inside of the bed class. So in other words, it doesn't have any characteristics. It doesn't have any actions that it can perform. It's just like a blank slate that we're calling bed. Okay? And so that's kind of defined over here. So public class bed defines bed objects, but since bed has no variables, it doesn't have any characteristics, and it doesn't have any methods, so it doesn't have any actions. Okay? We're going to try to fix that as we go on here. So there are some rules for naming classes. Yeah. Yes. There's some rules for naming classes, okay? They can't start with a numeral. Okay, these are all the same all of the same rules, except for this one. Should start with a capital letter. So classes are the only things that start with capital letters. Kinda. There's some other stuff too, but for right now, variables start with a lowercase letter, classes start with a capital letter, and we're going to see in a second that methods start with a lowercase letter as well. Okay, so the rules are pretty much the same. Okay, so methods inside of classes define instructions for actions that objects can do. Okay, so for example, there's a graphics class. That should sound familiar to you. Okay, it defines methods for setting color, filling an oval, drawing a rect, and other things. All right, there's a scanner class, and that defines this next line method, next int method, close method. Okay, so there's these classes out there that allow us to make objects like graphics objects so that we can do things with them. All right, the details of how the methods work are inside of the method definitions. And so we're going to talk about method definitions next. Okay? Every method has the same basic structure. It has an access modifier to tell us who or what objects can use it. It has a type. It has a name. It has a set of parentheses with what we call parameters. Okay? Then it has a set of brackets with instructions that go inside. All right? So for example, we've seen this type of method before. Public is an access modifier, void is the type, draw is the name of the method, graphics G is the parameters of it, and these are the instructions. So this is the instruction that executes when the draw method is invoked on whatever object this is. Yep.
What do you mean by parameters?
So that's a good question. So parameters are variables that the method needs in order to do its job. So in this case, what we're saying here is this object, whatever it is, cannot draw unless it gets some graphics to draw on. Okay? And we'll see other examples of that as we kind of move on. Okay, so when we want an object to perform an action, we have to add a method with the name of that action to its class. So for example, we want to be able to draw our bed, so then we need to add a draw method to the bed class. And then going back over to the programming, let's talk about what we're going to do here. So inside of here, inside of the class bed, we're going to go ahead and create a public void draw method with graphics G as its parameter. And that's what our method is going to look like. Now graphics needs to be imported, so I'm just going to mouse over that and select import graphics. Remember, you can always type this in up here as well. But what we're doing there is we're defining an action that a bed can do. Okay? So a bed can draw now. There's no instructions in here, so that means that when we draw, it won't do anything, but we're going to fix that in a second as well. Okay? So we already have some instructions for how a bed should draw. Okay? So we're going to go back over to Waz's room, or your name room, and then we're just going to select the code that goes with drawing the bed. So hopefully you labeled that and it's easy to find. For me, it's my bed, my pillows, and my sheet. Okay? And what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to copy that. So go to Edit, Copy, or right-click and copy it, and then go back over to the bed class. And what I'm going to do here is just right-click and paste. Okay? Now, unfortunately, we went from Waz's room that extends my world to bed that doesn't. And so these colors that we have, dark gray and red and black, in my example, are not recognized unless we tell it this is a color, and dark gray needs an underscore, and then import color. So I got to import color here, and then I got to just go color.red and color.black for the rest of these. Okay, so we did a couple things there. We pasted that stuff in, we imported color, and we put color dot in front of dark gray, red, and black. Now your colors could be different, and if you made like a new color in order to make your bed like we showed the other day, you can continue to do that. It's totally fine. But these are then the instructions that we're going to execute when we tell our bed to draw. Anybody need more time? Okay, going back to here. So, some rules for naming methods. Again, all the rules are pretty much the same. Can't start with a numeral, can't have spaces or punctuation, can't be a reserved word. Methods start with a lowercase letter, and methods use camel casing just like everything else. Okay? Java uses the reserved word new to create objects in programs, and that's called instantiating objects. Okay, so instantiating is kind of a weird word. Doesn't really sound like anything else you've probably ever heard of before. The root word of this is instance. Okay, if you think about it, like each of you is working on an instance of a computer, right? So you all have an object that's very similar to the object of the person that's next to you, but it's your instance of it. And so when we say instantiating, we mean creating an instance, or just saying creating an object. Okay? The way we do that in Java is using new, and then type of object, and then parentheses. Okay? And that we can put things inside of these parentheses. We'll see that on the next slide. But for example, we would say new bed, and then a set of parentheses, and that will create a bed object. All right? We can also use what's called a reference variable, right? And this is new for everybody in here, okay? So I know that we went through some of this stuff last week, but this is new. Creating a reference variable allows us to refer to the object later on in our code and look something like this. We take the type of the object, we give it a name that we're going to refer to, make it equal to a new whatever the object type is, and then whatever parameters we have. So for example, we've done this before, scanner console reader equals new scanner system.in. System.in is the parameter of the scanner, okay? It's what we're telling, like, this is what you're gonna scan, okay? And so console reader is what we call a reference variable. So now, back in our object room, we're going to create a bed object. And so this is a little bit different from what we've done before. We're going to go ahead and create a class inside of object-oriented programming default package. Okay, and this one is going to be Waz's or your name object room. We want that thing to extend my world or have my world as its superclass, and we want it to have a main method. Yeah. Bless you.
What's the class name?
Eric's object room. So when we finish that, we should get something that looks like this. Do I need to wait for anybody? Yeah. And so, like we've done in the past, we're going to go ahead and say in the main method that we want a new, whatever you called your class. So Waz's object room. And if we run that, we should get a my world kind of blank frame here because we haven't told it to draw anything yet. Okay, so draw has no instructions, so there's nothing drawn. But we're going to fix that. Okay, so inside of draw, we're going to go bed B equals new bed. That's different from what we did last week.
That's you.
So B is what we call a reference variable. Okay? B refers to the bed object, the new bed object. Okay? New means instantiate, which means create an object. Okay? So I'm going to put new in quotes so you guys know what I'm talking about, the new that's down here. All right? And then, so that means instantiate bed. All right? Okay, so let's go back to the notes then. So what we've done is said that when Woz's object room draws, we're going to create a bed object, and we said that we're going to call it B. Okay? The dot operator, which is just a period, is used to access members from an object. So members are either variables or methods. And we've seen this happen before. Okay? So we've seen G dot fill rect. The dot operator is just the period. And we're saying basically here, take your graphics object, what we refer to as G, and tell it to do fill rect. Or take the console reader that we use to reference scanner and tell it to do next line. Okay? This also works for objects, but we don't normally do things this way where we say like new bed dot draw. We usually do things the way that we have them up here. Okay? And so what we're going to do in our room now is tell our bed, which we refer to as B, to draw. So go over back to that, and we're going to go B dot. And now, because we already programmed in a draw method, okay, when I start doing B dot D, it figures out, oh, you must want to draw, and I can just hit enter, and it fills that in for me. Okay. So we use the dot operator to either access or do things in the objects class. Just wait. All right. And so one way that you can think about what we're doing down in this line here is we can say, this is like saying B do draw. B dot draw is like saying B, which is our bed, do draw. And now when we run this thing, okay, we have our bed object in our room. All right, so your assignment then is going to be to create classes for the other objects in your room. So you'll have like a dresser class, maybe a rug class, okay, things like that. And then you're going to finish your object-oriented room drawing. All right, that's going to be your assignment.